Hello guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is CPM Akan. Today I would like to discuss about withholding tax. First, I would like to discuss what is the meaning of the word withholding tax. The word withholding tax, as the name suggests, it means retain. Therefore, when you are making some certain amount of income to somebody else, there is some amount of money at a particular rate that you need to retain. That amount of money you are retaining is what we are calling withholding tax. Therefore, withholding tax is a method of tax collection where a payer of a certain incomes deducts tax upon payments of certain incomes to payees and then remits the tax so deducted to the commissioner of the domestic taxes depending on when you have done this deduction. And on this note, you are supposed to make the remittance 5 days after deduction. Very important point, that it is just amount of money you have deducted from the incomes you are making to the payee or employee or somebody who has come to work for you. So that amount you retain behind, and you are supposed to remit this amount you have retained within 5 days upon deduction. Very important. The rate of deduction, that is the rate at which you are retaining this money, depends on two things. One, the residency of the payee. Where is this person living? Is it a resident of Kenya or it is a non-resident? Two, it also depends with the type of income. So there are two. So we have those incomes that will fall under withholding tax, and we have those incomes that will fall outside withholding tax. And then it also depends on the residence of that person. Is a person resident? When we talk about a resident, you're talking about a person who lives in Kenya and or operates a business in Kenya. And a resident person is a person who has business in Kenya, right? But that particular business was not formed based on the laws of Kenya, but it was incorporated outside the laws of the country, but has come into our country to operate. For instance, Barclays Bank, Kenya Breweries. Those are examples of banks. Those are examples of businesses that operate in our country, Kenya, but they were incorporated outside our country. They are called non-residents. Now, I've said that the rate at which we deduct these taxes from the amount you are paying will depend on two things. One is the residence of that payee. Two is the type of income. So I would like to take you through the type of incomes and then the rates at which they occur. Number one, we have what they call artists and entertainers. These are people who do entertaining. They come and gather the crowd and then entertain us. And maybe you have employed them for a particular period of time. They come and do some entertainment. For example, we have the MCs who are called upon to come and facilitate a particular function. These particular people are entertainers. And then artists are the singers also. Artists, those who actually bless our souls. Those people, when you call them, you need to pay them some money. When you pay them, you are supposed to retain certain percentage. Now, if that artist or entertainer is a Kenyan, you don't retain anything. You pay 100%. That means if you have agreed at the rate of 10,000, for example, you'll pay the entire 10,000. So you'll not retain anything. But if a person is a non-resident, you'll retain 20%. So you will only give out 80%. Another category of the type of income is management fees. Management fees is a kind of management where somebody is taking care of your property. For example, the property managers. These people, when they collect rent, they collect rent from the tenants, and then later they will pay the owner of the building. When the owner of the building makes the payment to these managers, the owner of the building, that is now the landlord or the landlady, should retain 5% of the management fees if that person is a Kenyan, not a Kenyan, sorry, a resident. If that person is not a resident, the landlord or landlady should reduce or should retain 20% of the total fees. The second category is professional fees. These are fees charged by professionals like accountants, auditors, doctors, engineers, when they come into your facility or into organization to do a particular professional job. Now, when you are paying them, you should not pay 100%. You ask yourself a question: is that a person a resident or a non-resident? Now, professional fees, when you are paying nowadays, you should retain 5% if it is a resident and 20% if it is a non-resident. The second category of a type of income is training fees. Remember, we have training organization or bodies who are actually imparting current knowledge into the employees. So when you bring these people into the organization to train your staffs, you are supposed to pay them amount of money. That amount of money you pay because of the training is what they call training fees. These training fees, if that person training is a resident, remember, a person here, I'm talking about an individual or a limited company. So don't say when I talk a person, I'm referring to an individual only. No, I'm referring to either of them. If it is a resident, you should charge 5%. If it is a non-resident, you should charge 20%. Another category is winnings from betting, gaming, prize competition, or gambling. So we have those people who do winning, they normally do betting, they game, all that. When these people win, the company paying them should deduct 20% from the winning amount or a gambling or that price competition amount. So you should retain the 20% for the resident. And if that person who has won that particular prize outside from and is a non-resident, you should also retain what? 20%. Another category of a type of income is royalties. Royalties is just the amount of money one receives from a person who is using his or her property or an asset. For example, artists, if you use their songs to entertain you in the office, or you use their songs to entertain a public, so you have to pay that person because you are using that intellectual asset. That intellectual asset has to be paid. That is why we have MCSK. MCSK is just a body in Kenya that is collecting these royalties on behalf of the artists. Now, if you are paying this amount to these artists, you should also retain 5% for residents and 20% for a non-resident. Another category is dividends, payment of dividends. In Kenya, you are supposed to retain 10% for non-resident, for resident, and 15% for non-resident. Another category is interest from the banks. If the banks pay you interest because of fixed amount you deposited with them, they should retain 15% of the interest they are paying you. If it is a resident, and if you are non-resident, still 15%. Then we have also interest on housing bond. Housing bond, if the housing body corporation in Kenya is paying the interest for the depositors, housing bond should retain 10%. Another category of the type of income is what we call rent on buildings, immovables. In this case, you have to retain 10% for the resident and 30% for non-resident. Then we have also pensions and provident schemes. Pensions, when you are receiving a pension from a particular organization that you've invested in, what will happen there is that particular company has to retain between 10% to 30% for a resident and 5% for non-resident. Also, we have consultancy. If you are a consultant and you are offering your services, a person who is paying you should retain 5% as a non-resident and 20% as non-resident for the consultants. Now we have also contractual. We have those people who have won the contracts. You tendered, and then they tendered their willingness to go work on that particular contract. When they win a contract and you have that it has reached a point where you need to pay them, you are supposed to pay less 3%, which means retain 3%, pay 97%. Correct. Then we have also what we call the digital content monetization. This one was introduced in the Act 2023. This is a new thing whereby people who are earning money on digital, they are supposed also to pay tax at the rate of 5%. Then we have also gains from financial derivatives. Here in Kenya, the government has not decided at what rate this particular gains should be retained at. But for the non-resident, it should be at 10%. Then we have also withholding tax on rental income tax by tax agents. So we have tax agents who have actually been mandated by government to collect tax on behalf of the KRA. So these people are supposed to retain 7.5% of the total rent on gross. Remember, I shared this particular area of rental income in my previous video. So kindly review my previous video to see how you, as a landlady, you are supposed to do this. So from this January 1st of January 2024, you are supposed to deduct at the rate of, you are supposed to retain 7.5% of your total rental collection and then remit to KRA. Correct? If you don't have that, maybe you have appointed the agents. The agents will do the same. They will retain 7.5% of the same. Now, on this note, we have to also discuss about withholding tax payment. At what time do we do payments? First of all, we have to understand withholding tax, as I have explained below earlier, that withholding tax means retention. Now, on this note, the payer of any of the above incomes, the one I've just discussed, is responsible for deducting tax and at a source from payments made and remitting the deducted tax to KRA. So if you have deducted the taxes that I've informed you about, the professional fees or the management fees, dividends, interest, once you do that, it is you supposed to do what? To deduct this money and then remit to KRA. When? 5 days after deduction. Very important point. Now, on this note, if you fail to deduct or remit this payment within the 5 days, what will happen? In this case, you will be imposed with the penalties at the rate of 5%. So it is mandatory and it's an offense for you not to practice this. If you are paying your accountant, a practicing accountant, not the one you have employed, no, a person who has come just to offer the professional services. If a doctor has been called on, if an engineer has been called, ensure that you deduct the rates I've informed you, so that you ensure that you comply with the government for you to comply with it. Correct? Now, on this note, then, we'd like to know, withholding tax exemptions. Who are these people that when they come into a facility, they offer the professional services to you, but you are not supposed to withhold even a single shilling? We have a group of people that government, according to the laws that we operate now at the moment, exempt them from you retaining. You pay them the entire amount of money. One is the dividends received by a company from a subsidiary or an associate where this particular company controls 12.5% or more. If a company controls 12.5% or more from a local subsidiary or associate, then that dividend is exempted from withholding tax. Another category is royalties, interest, management fees, professional fees offered by or paid to special economic zones. Special economic zones are a government policy where they are trying to empower people from the ground. So if these people come and do service for you, when you are paying them, do not deduct anything, but you pay the entire amount of money. Correct? Then on this same note now, we want to discuss about when do we pay this. Before that, let's discuss about whether withholding tax is final or not final. Now, when we talk about a final tax, we mean that this is a tax that has already been made to the KRA or to the revenue available, but you are not supposed to declare it at the year end. Correct? You get my point? Like most of the VATs, you are not supposed to declare it at the year end. But we have those taxes, even though you have deducted, the payee, the person who received that money, will be forced to declare the amount deducted at the source where he worked before. That means then that that income is not final tax. Therefore, in this case, we are going to say that not all the types of income I've mentioned are a final tax. We have those that are a final tax, and we have those ones that are not final tax. For instance, we can talk about withholding tax of a final when deducted in relation to payment made to a non-resident person. So if you are making a payment to a non-resident person, that non-resident person will not claim or declare these deductions from when this person is making declaration at the end of the year. So when you will be making now file returns at the end of the year, this particular person will not be required to declare any amount that he got from another source. Another one is with regard to payments to resident persons. Withholding tax is a final tax when it relates to winnings. So, for example, winning, gambling, all this money we get from winning and gambling are final. Okay, but we have those ones that are not final. In every other case, withholding tax is not a final tax. The taxpayer or payee is required to deduct their incomes or to declare their incomes at the year end with other sources of income. So very important that these deductions we are talking about as withholding tax is not final. Some are not final, some are finals. So in this case, you need to be guided by professional accountant or KRA to guide you to know which are the finals and which are not finals. So on this note, how do we pay? Very simple. So payment is just done directly on iTax. iTax has been made simple and simpler for you, whereby you just log into your KRA, log into your iTax, put your PIN there, open it, do the filing of returns, and ensure that you make the payments within the 5 days from the time you have done your deductions. For any question, kindly reach me either as a comment down there or on my 0735 346 777. Kindly, if you like my videos, kindly subscribe, share, and even like them. Thank you. Next lesson will come soon. Be blessed.